Hi everyone, this is Outside World Entertainment. Today we're featuring Cindy.
So these are my ingredients. We have 4 large eggs, 1 cup of milk, 2/3 cup butter softened, 2 cups of sugar, 2 limes, 1 teaspoon vanilla, 1 teaspoon salt, 3 teaspoons baking powder, and 3 cups all-purpose flour.
Go.
So I'm just gonna zest the skin of the lime. We only need about 2 limes worth of zest for our entire cake and glaze. So this is our final amount of lime zest. Remember that lime zest is purely optional.
Go.
So to make our batter, we'll be adding in the butter. This is 2/3 cup of softened butter. Next, I'm going to add my sugar. I do a little bit of sugar at a time so I don't get any clumps. And I'm going to mix this all together. Make sure this sugar is nice and wet. So I'm going to take my hand mixer and I'm just going to give it a couple twirls. After this is all mixed up, I continue to add my sugar a little bit by little bit until I get to 2 cups of sugar. So I continue mixing, get it all nice and wet. I'm going to add more sugar. And then you just want to mix it all up. And it should become the consistency of wet sand. So as you see here, we have the consistency that I'm looking for. It's not too wet, it's not too dry. And I'm just going to take a spatula and make sure all the sugar is added here. Make sure nothing is stuck at the bottom because sometimes you might get dry spots at the bottom. Okay, looks good. Now I'm going to add my eggs. These are 4 eggs cracked and I just dumped them in there. And once these are all added, I'm going to take the hand mixer again and beat this all up. So you want to get all of your sugar and butter mixture to be incorporated with the eggs. So now this is what your batter should look like. It'll be nice and smooth, very easy to work with. You can scrape it all down from the sides of the bowl to make sure you're getting all of it and there will be no dry pieces. So now I'm going to add my lime juice. This gives it a nice lime flavor. If you don't like the lime flavor, you don't have to add as much as I did, or you can even add a little bit more if you want. I'm going to mix it all up. And now I'm going to add the lime zest. This gives the finished cake a nice texture as well as a little bit of flavor. If you don't like that texture, if you don't like feeling those little gritty bits in the cake itself, you don't have to add this. This is purely optional and I'm just going to incorporate it and make sure my batter is still nice and smooth. Don't want any air bubbles. So now I'm going to be mixing my dry ingredients together. This is 3 cups of all-purpose flour, 3 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1 teaspoon of salt. And I'm just going to give that a quick little mix. And now I'm going to mix my flour mixture into the wet ingredients here. I'm going to do a little bit by little bit to avoid the chunks. I don't like breaking up chunks with a hand mixer. It's too much work. So I'm just going to do a little bit by little bit. And I'm also going to alternate the flour with the milk. So when I see that the batter is getting a little bit dry, I'll start adding milk. And when it gets too wet, I'll start adding flour until both ingredients are done. One thing to keep in mind, a cake like this, if you're not a fan of limes, which most people probably aren't, you can always do this with another fruit, citrus fruit like lemon. I've made this cake with the same exact recipe. I just substituted limes for lemons. There's also an orange version out there. You can try that. Yeah, or you can just make a pound cake. Just don't add any fruit, don't add limes, don't add lemons, and you'll get the same exact result, just no fruit. So I'm continuing to add my milk little bit by little bit. I don't want those little flour pieces, the dry flour pieces that sometimes happen in cake batter. So as you can see, my batter is really smooth, really delicious looking, and it smells so good. If you're like me, you like to taste a little bit here and there. Don't do that if anyone's looking though. So I actually do see a couple little clumpy parts. It's okay, but I do like to get it as smooth as possible, and I'm making sure there's no air bubbles. You don't want to beat it too much because then you'll get the air in there and it won't bake that well. So I'm going to add a little bit of vanilla essence here. This is just maybe like a teaspoon or two. It's just an average. So now it's time to go into the oven. My mom was nice enough to grease and flour this pan for me. So I'm just going to add half of my batter here. This recipe makes 2 of these pans. These are just the little loaf pans that you get literally anywhere. Just smooth it out. Make sure there's batter all on the bottom of the pan and that both sides of the pan have even amount. So now this is my second pan. This is the rest of my batter. You don't want to fill your pan because it does rise up a little bit, and then you don't want it spilling out of the pan into the oven. I used to do that when I was younger. I used to fill the pans all the way up, and then when you open the oven, there's cake everywhere. So I've definitely learned how to avoid that. So while my cake is baking, I'm going to prepare the glaze. This is just a simple glaze, and I'm going to use a cup of powdered sugar and a little bit of lime juice. If you don't like the lime flavor, you can use just plain water. And I'm going to mix it all together until I think that I have the right consistency. So the glaze is really easy to adjust. If you find that this is too watery, you can always add more powdered sugar. If it's too dry, you can add more liquid. So as you can see here, it's looking a little bit more like glaze. I'm mixing it all up, and like always, I'm avoiding any sugary clumps or any dry spots, and I'm also judging to see if I need more liquid or more powdered sugar. You can always do this with the hand mixer, but I prefer doing it by hand because I'm able to feel out the ingredients a little bit better. So this is the glaze all mixed up. I am adding a little bit of lemon zest in there. You don't have to do this. This is Like I said, purely optional. It does give it a little bit of flavor, and remember that there is lime juice in this glaze, so you definitely don't want to add more lime if you don't like it. If you love lime, go ahead and do it. Trying to get all the chunks out there, and I'm also judging the consistency here. So I actually did end up adding a little bit more water. I didn't want it to taste more like lime more than it already did, so I'm adding water as a substitute. This ended up being a little too watery for me, and I ended up adding some more powdered sugar for when I did put it on the cake. But like I said, it's up to you. So now time for the fun part, adding the glaze onto the cake. So I took the cake out of the oven. It's completely cool here. It's actually on like a little wired rack, so when I'm putting the glaze and it falls down the sides, it doesn't pool up at the bottom of the cake. And then you have a big sticky mess at the bottom, so it's actually falling down onto the aluminum wrap there. Just scooping it all out with this spatula. If you want, you can move the glaze around like icing, or you can leave it for this pretty cool looking marble effect. I'm just squeezing out as much glaze as I possibly can. I have a habit of trying to use every single drop because I don't want any of it to go to waste. So I'm just trying to even it out here. Make sure there's enough glaze on both sides evenly. And now I'm going to add the remaining lime zest. You don't have to do this, but I had a little left over and I didn't want those poor limes to suffer without a cause. So here I am adding just a little bit more, just for that little pop of color. It looks really good on the white glaze. So I wanted to make the glaze dry a little, but I just couldn't wait to cut into this. So I'm gonna cut it open and see what it looks like inside. It's nice and golden, pretty spongy, and it smells really good. Nice soft texture. And believe it or not, this was eaten by the end of the day.
So this is the Outside World Entertainment, a Shaker and Davy cooking channel. If you like our show, please give us thumbs up and subscribe to us, and we'll see you in our next video. Thank you.